Hello everyone, welcome to class. I'm Abel and I'll be your government and CRS teacher. So we're dealing with government, and the topic is introduction to government. The word government is not a strange word. It's actually very common, especially in Nigeria where everything we do is blamed on government. Bad road, government. No power supply, government. Lack of basic infrastructure, government. So the question is, if government is at the center of all our problems, then what exactly is the importance of government and why does it exist? It's important to know that government came into being as a result of people living together. So the very moment where you have people in a community, where people interrelate on a daily basis, it's important that there must be an apparatus that controls the affairs of people in a bid to ensure peaceful coexistence. According to James Madison, who was the fourth president of the United States of America, he said, if all men were angels, then government would not be necessary. But the truth is this, men are not angels. So as a result, it is important that government must exist. For the sake of this discourse, we shall be discussing government under three broad categories. The first one, government as an institution of the state. Secondly, government as an act of government. And the third, government as an academic field of study. Okay, now the first one, government as an institution of the state. Now when you look at this, we have two key words here. The first is institution. The second is state. It is important to note that there is a symbiotic relationship between government and the state. Just so you know, no state, no government. No government, no state. They are practically interwoven. And it is important to note that government as an institution of the state can simply be defined as the machinery through which the will of the state is formulated, expressed, and realized. I'll take that again. Government as an institution of the state is the machinery through which the will of the state is formulated, expressed, and realized. Now, in practical sense, let's do it this way. If government were to be an engine, then the state would be a car. And you understand that for a car to move, for the locomotive nature of a car to come to life, it is important that there must be an engine. The moment you remove that element called engine from the car, that car is as good as dead. So therefore, the moment you remove government from the state, this political entity ceases to become a state. Because according to the Peace Treaty of Westphalia that was signed in the year 1648, which gave birth to the concept of the modern state, it was agreed that for any political entity to qualify to be a state, it must have three elements. Number one, it must have the people element. Remember I told you earlier that the moment people started living together, it became important for government to exist. Secondly, it must have the territory element, the territorial element. State is about the prominent actor in international relations that has geography as its major element. And number three, government is important for a state to exist. So the third element that a state must possess is the element of what? Of government. So do not forget, the moment you remove government from the state, that state ceases to be called a state. In some parlance, it could be called a failed state or a collapsed state. Examples, we have Somalia, we have Sudan, we have Congo, among others. Now, government as an institution of the state can also be said to be that machinery that brings to life the ideas of the state. That machinery that projects the very essence of the state. Now, looking at it analytically. Government must have three major elements. Do not forget, for government to exist, it is important that it must have three major elements. And this is a universal statement. So if we are to microscopically look at governments, we are bound to find one, what you call the executive. Number two, we are bound to have the legislature. And number three, we are to have the judiciary. Holistically, these three are referred to as the organs or the arms of government. Ladies and gentlemen, governments all over the world, speaking emphatically, must, now I did not say may, I said what? Must have these three elements for it to be complete. For the apparatus of government to be complete, compulsory it must have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And these three work together to bring to life the will of the state. Now, it is important to answer the question of why does government exist. I did mention earlier that the moment you have people living together, compulsorily there must be an element that controls them. However, the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, Chapter 2, Section 14(2)(b) states that the primary reason for the formation of government shall be 1. Security, and 2. Welfare. So government all over the world has the sacred responsibility to ensure 1. The security of its people living within its territorial space, and secondly, the welfare of its people. The moment a government fails to attend to these two needs, that government has failed in the reason for its creation. So do not forget, government has a responsibility to ensure, number 1, the security of its people, and number 2, the welfare of its people. And the security of a state can be broken down into 2. That's what we call the internal security and the external security. Internal security talks about ensuring peace and harmony within the people elements of a state through the use of paramilitary forces like the police, the civil defense, among others. The external talks about protecting the territorial integrity of a state against external interference through the use of the armed force, in which case you are likely to have the army, the navy, and the air force. So once more, do not forget, government as an institution of the state is the machinery through which the will of the state is formulated, expressed, and realized. Let's go to the second one. Government as an act of governing. It is important to note that as far as a state is concerned, the government has the highest powers of that state, and it is not under the influence or the control of any other state. Government as an act of governing simply means government is vested with the supreme power of the state. I'll say that again. Government as an act of governing simply means government is vested with the supreme power of a state. And the powers of government are enshrined in the Constitution. Do not forget, the powers of government at every time is enshrined in, especially if it's a democratic state, is enshrined in the Constitution. Because of time, let us look at the last one. Government as an academic field of study. I'll say that again. Government as an academic field of study. It is important to note that from cradle to grave, we learn government at different times under different names. Take for instance, and when you were in primary school, you must have been taught what you call social studies, where you are taught the community, the society, how to interrelate with people. You were taught the dynamics, of state structure, culture, and all of that. That in itself is an element of government. Now, when you migrated from the primary section of education and went to the secondary, you were, at the general level, you were also taught social studies, but at the senior level, you graduate to learning government in itself. Alright, so you talk about introduction to government like what we are doing now. The academic part of government simply means learning the rudiments of government and how it manifests under different names. Now, when you leave secondary school and go to the university, for some persons that want to study law is an important aspect of government. Just so you know, when we talk about the legislature has a responsibility. That responsibility is to make laws. So when you study law in the university, you are studying government under a different nomenclature, which is called law. Now, for the sake of this, let me quickly expatiate a little bit. The executive, as an organ of government, has a primary responsibility. Now, when I say primary responsibility, I mean that responsibility by which it is identified. That cause that it is created for, among other things. The executive has a responsibility to formulate and implement policies. I'll take that again. The executive organ of government is constitutionally responsible for the formulation and implementation of policies. Now, the executive organ of government is like a class. And when you have a class, you are likely to have members of class. Let us look at members of the executive class of government. Of course, do not forget, government exists at different levels. Using Nigeria as a case study, government exists at 3 levels since we practice a federal system of government, where we have government at the federal, at the states, and at the local government units. Now, in the executive organ of government, the president belongs to this class. Other members include governors, talking about head of government at the state level. We also have local government chairmen, talking about the head of the executive at the local government level. Then we have ministers, commissioners, civil servants. We have the armed force, among many others. And their responsibility is to formulate and implement government policies, and they also enforce the law, just so you know. Secondly, legislature. This is the law-making body of a state. I'll say that again. The legislature is the law-making body of a state. So if you have laws governing a particular area, it is most likely to show that the legislature is performing its duty of lawmaking. Now, what are laws? Laws are basically rules, principles, and regulations that guide the existence of humans in a bid to ensure peaceful and harmonious living. That's what laws are. And under the legislature, we have 2 types. So you call the bicameral legislature, aka bicameralism, and there is unicameral legislature, aka unicameralism. Now, when you have a bicameral state, what it means therefore is that we have 2 bodies that makes law in that state. Say for instance, Nigeria is an example of a bicameral state. At the federal level of government, we have 2 lawmaking bodies, where there is an upper house and a lower house. The upper house is called the Senate, aka the Red Chamber. The lower house is called the Federal House of Representatives, aka the Green Chamber. Collectively, under a common umbrella, they are called the National Assembly. This is at the federal level of government. At the state level, where we have 36 federating states, what we have is a unicameral legislature, where there is just one body making law. So we have bicameral at the federal level of Nigeria, and we have unicameral at the state level. Last but not least is the judiciary. Now, judiciary is a very important part of any democratic setup. This is so because the judiciary is the hope of the common man. I'll take that again. Judiciary is referred to as the hope of the common man. This man is responsible for lawmaking, while the judiciary is responsible for interpreting the law and punishing offenders. So if for any reason your right is infringed on by an individual, an organization, or even by government itself, you are allowed to seek redress in the court of law. There's a Latin maxim that says "Ubi just ibi remedium." This is the Latin maxim that guides judiciary all over the world, and it goes to say that once your right has been violated, there must be a remedy. Once your right is violated, you are open to a remedy, and that remedy can be gotten through the judiciary, which is the hope of the common man. In judiciary, we have the bar, the bench, and of course the law courts. Okay, now back to this. Government is an academic field of study. It is basically studying the rudiments of government under different names. Now, what are the programs that are available under government as an academic field of study? They include, I mentioned earlier that government can be studied as law. It can be studied as political science. Now, in most universities, you will find it as political science and public administration. It can be studied as local government administration. It can also be studied as history. I'm studying as international relations. So it can also be studied as comparative politics, and political economics, among many others. Now, having listed all of these, let us look at some of the attributes of governance. Now let us look at the attributes of government. Number one, periodic change. This is very important, especially governments in a democratic society. The word periodic is from the word period. Period means happening within a specific time range. Change, it means removing a government from another. In democratic parlance, it is called a tenure. Now, Nigeria became a democratic state again in the year 1999. It was after successive military coup d'etat. From 1999, governments of Nigeria at different times have come and gone. It is important to note that, yes, government is an important feature of a state. However, it is not a permanent feature of a state. Government must come and go. And the tool that is necessary for the change of government under a democratic setup, that tool where the people go and vote for their preferred candidates, is referred to as elections. So election is an important element in democracy because it helps to change government per time. Another attribute of government is law. I mentioned earlier that laws are simply principles, rules, regulations that governs the affairs of people in a bid to ensure peaceful coexistence, and it is made by the legislature, which is primarily responsible for law making. Number 3 is revenue. This is an important attribute of government. Revenue is necessary for government to carry out its responsibility. Money is basically what we're talking about here. Government needs money to carry out its duty of welfare, its duty of security. And of course, government every year presents what is called a budget. And a budget is basically the expected income and expenditure of a state within a period of time, usually for 1 year. Number 4, workforce. This is very important. Government is an institution that consists people. The people are the workforce of a government. They are the ones that implement, they see to the realization, to the functionality of government. Because of our time, we will dwell on these four. Act of government again. Number one, periodic change. Government must come and go. Number two, law, basically rules, regulations, and customs. Number three, revenue. Number four, workforce. Let us now look at the functions of government. Functions of government. Number one, I mentioned earlier that government has two sacred responsibilities, and they are security. So that's the first one, security. Number two, welfare. Welfare. We also have provision of basic amenities. Government must ensure that its people, part-time, are taken care of. Government must always provide and attend to the basic requirements of its people, talking about food, shelter, clothing, among many others. Number four, responsibility of government, law making. And do not forget, this is primarily attached to the legislature. We also have formulation of policies. This is attached to the executive. And of course, we have interpretation of laws. This is attached to the judiciary. So ladies and gentlemen, do not forget, government is responsible for security, welfare, provision of basic amenities, lawmaking, formulation of policies, interpretation of laws, among many, many others. So by way of a recap, do not forget that government under this discourse can be defined under three broad categories. Number one, government as an institution of the state. Secondly, government as an art of governing. And number three, government as an academic field of study. The organs of government include the executive, which is responsible for policy formulation and implementation, the legislature, also known as parliament, which is responsible for lawmaking, and of course the judiciary, which is the home of the common man and is responsible for interpretation of laws. Under the attributes of government, we have periodic change, we have law, we have revenue, we have workforce, we have legitimacy, and under the function of government, we have security, welfare, provision of basic social amenities, lawmaking, formation of policies, and interpretation of laws. Please do have to consult your textbook. You can read up on essential government, talking about this topic. You can also look at governance, which is written by an erudite scholar, WAEC, and Art Journal as well. There you have access to resource materials that will enhance your understanding of this topic. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself.